Help me, Joby One. You're my only hope.
It's too soon, Mum. It's too soon.
Hello. My name's Sam and welcome to my channel So Let's Sparkle with Sam, and today is my episode 8. It's movie week and it's my synopsis of this week's Great British Sewing Bee. Week 8! Can you believe it? I can't believe it's week 8. So we've got, 2 more weeks and final, and we'll have a winner. Amazing. I am very excited. I hope you're excited too. If you haven't watched yet, don't worry, come and watch me another time. There will be spoilers, and if so, if you have watched and you're ready, then grab yourself a cuppa and let's get into it. So normally in these videos I don't talk much about other bits and pieces, life or anything else that's going on in my world other than just Sewing Bee, but I wanted to, if you will indulge me, just let you know about something that happened this week. So my lovely boy Joe, aka Baby Sparkles, went a little bit out of his comfort zone this week, and he did a comedy gig in our local town, and he was amazing. So I'm just literally taking this opportunity to do a little proud mummy moment and just tell everyone how proud I am of my son. He was absolutely fantastic. There was 6 acts, a lot of whom the other acts had been doing it for a really long time. And he got up on that stage, he did his thing, he made everybody laugh. And I was sat in the audience in my brand new me-made Zoe dress, which I'll pop up here from Emporium Patterns, beaming from ear to ear, the proudest mummy in the room. So yeah, so there's no Baby Sparkles excerpt this week because he is having a little bit of a rest this week because he has been working really hard. But I just wanted to let you know that I am extremely proud of him, and we will see Baby Sparkles next week. Don't you just love the first kind of 30 seconds of each episode of Sewing Bee? And this week didn't disappoint with the Patrick, here's Paddy. It was very funny and it made me giggle. I must just put a little kind of clause in to this week's episode. I love film. I am a big Star Wars fan, which is why I've got wearing my Star Wars Tony shirt, my Emporium Patterns Tony shirt, Star Wars shirt. I love film and I love particularly sci-fi, and I love Star Wars. However, I'm not a big horror fan. Of all of the kind of film genres, it's not my favourite. So yeah, I have to say, when I knew it was going to be horror, there was a little part of me that was like, ooh. So yeah, it's just not my favourite genre. What's your favourite genre? Let me know in the comments. I have to say I love a good rom-com, I love a good sci-fi. But yeah, horror's just, I don't see the point, I scare myself on a daily basis, so I don't need to watch horror for horror film. Anywho. The pattern challenge. So the pattern challenge was inspired by the lovely Edith Head. I love Edith Head. I just think she's absolutely amazing. So the costume designer, they had 5 hours, and the jacket was from the film The Birds, and it's like a softly tailored jacket. So it had an underarm gusset. So gusset, it's one of those words, isn't it? Moist gusset. Some people love it, some people hate it. I don't know how I feel about it, but the gusset goes in under the arm, and 17 pieces. They had to cut out the outer and the lining and everything, and they had 5 hours. So how did they all get on in the pattern challenge? So Kaz had she had a bad time, and I have to say I was getting really concerned because I noticed last week that they were giving Stuart a lot of time at the beginning, and of course then Stuart went home, and this week in the pattern challenge they were kind of giving Kaz a lot of time. I was panicking. I was like, oh no, this cannot be the week that Kaz goes home just because she's managed to cut a pattern piece out of another piece that she's already cut out of, because I've done that hundreds of times, and it was like, oh, I was getting quite stressed. But she pulled it back. All was okay. So that was a relief. Yasmin, I think Yasmin struggled a little bit with this challenge. The collar wasn't quite right. Orla in Orla's way, just got on with it. I love Orla's attitude. It's something about, you know, being youthful and just thinking, well, what's the worst that can happen? It's just fabric. I'll try it again. And yeah, she did really, really well. And it was a really, really tricky construction of a jacket. So I thought she did really well. Gaynor struggled, didn't finish, was really struggling. I think the thing is, when you're a more experienced sewer and you're used to doing things and you do things in your way, the way that you've learned, and you do them over and over again, if someone is asking you to do it in a different way, it can be more difficult than if you've never done it before and you're just blindly reading the instructions. I have definitely found that with you know, different, you know, collar constructions. I like to put a collar in a certain way, and if someone's given me different instructions, of course I follow the instructions, but it can be really difficult, and I think Gaynor struggled from that this week, and so it wasn't quite finished. Kit decided to top stitch the gusset, the underarm gusset, because I don't think that they were very happy with how it was laying. So top stitched it, and of course that would make it look very neat. However, I was quite glad that Patrick pointed out that actually the whole point of the gusset under the arm is that gives you that extra bit of space under the arm for stretching, because obviously it's all very well wearing a jacket, but we don't all walk around like this. We kind of need to move our arms up and down. So that gusset, because generally with a jacket you'd be wearing something underneath, and then that gives you that extra room. So yeah, so I think they all did fairly well, but they, you know, nobody did perfectly in that kind of challenge. There was no kind of real, in my opinion, there was no standout first, but they have to put them in all in order. So the order went as, in 5th place was Gaynor, 4th was Kaz, 3rd was Yasmin, 2nd was Orla, and 1st was Kit. And that was that. So the transformation challenge. In the transformation challenge, they had cinema curtains, and I was so excited to see the cinema curtains. And they had dark, like red velvet velour curtains. They had quite big curtains, and one of the rules were they had their standard 90 minutes. One of the rules were they had like tie backs and sashes, and they had to use the sash in the make. I think, you know, transformation challenges are hard enough. Talk about making it more difficult. And they had to make an outfit to go to an awards party. So yeah. And I have to say, in this particular challenge, Orla had a mare. I think it's the correct phrase. Bless her little cotton socks. She really struggled. She picked a beautiful curtain, and it had these gorgeous big kind of pleats, and it gave really nice shaping, and I can see why she picked it, but it was so heavy and it wasn't able to drape at all. And she, bless her heart, she persevered. She kept going for over half of the challenge, but just couldn't get the curtain into her vision. So 15 minutes from the end, she swapped curtains, and she managed to get an outfit out. How she managed to do that, I do not know, but she did. So well done, Orla. Sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes the best, what's the phrase? The best made plans and all that just didn't work out. But yeah, she came up with an outfit, and I'm not quite sure who's wearing that to an awards party, but who knew? Then there was, Kaz. Kaz was looking really good, and then she cut it and she was like, oops, I've made it indecent. And it looked like all was not going very well again, and I got all panicky again. But she pulled it out, she popped some go days in, and she made a really lovely kind of, it had nice shape to it, it kind of dipped at the back. She used the cords, the braided tie back cords as straps, and it looked very nice. I really enjoyed Kaz's award outfit. I'm not, again, a little bit risque to wear maybe, but you see a lot of that on the red carpet, don't you? And then there was Kit. So Kit did a fitted bodice and used the braiding along the top, and then kind of like a crisscross along the back, and so it was a very fitted bodice and then a nice simple gown. Very pretty. And Gaynor did a really kind of glamorous gathered dress. Now I'm gonna, me, I'm normally Miss Positive Pants on everything, and I'm always little Miss Positive Pants, and I always support the judges. I always support Patrick and Esme, but Esme, in my opinion, used a word that I really don't like this week, and she said that Gaynor's was mumsy. And I don't like that word, because then it makes it feel like it's derogatory to be a mum. And I'm gonna be mumsy all my life. So yeah, I know what she meant was that it perhaps didn't have as glamorous silhouette as she wanted it to be. But award ceremonies, I spoke to my lovely friend Rachel, the French Seams, this morning, and as she said, award ceremonies are for everyone, aren't they? You'll get your Taylor Swift wearing a dress, you'll get your Helen Mirren wearing a dress. Maybe Gaynor's was for Helen Mirren, who knows? I think that there is a place for everyone on a red carpet, and yeah, I liked Gaynor's transformation. It was all right. It was okay. And then Yasmin went for a full kind of flowy Grecian effect. I loved it. And it was one of those ones that I don't think it got enough praise either. It did come top, but I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It was probably one of the best transformation challenges that, kind of results that I've seen for a little while. And the scores came as thus. So in 5th place was Orla, 4th was Gaynor, 3rd was Kaz, 2nd was Kit, and 1st was Yasmin. Most deserved. I thought it was an absolutely stonking transformation challenge, and nice for Yasmin to have another win. So that brings us on to the made to measure. So it was time for the models to come out, and this week they were actors because they had to make them horror costumes. Oh, the horror. Now, it was stated very much that it needed to be horror costumes, not fancy dress. And the costume needed to tell a story, fit well, and they were hoping to see some stressing of the fabric. So bearing that in mind, horror costumes, not fancy dress, tell a story, fit well and stressed. And so that's what they were looking for. Orla's was absolutely terrifying. I'm gonna say again, I'm not a big horror fan. That is not something that I would normally go for. It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. And also, it was genius. So she made a horror doll costume. It was disturbing. It had a 3D printed spine down the back. So she'd got these 3D printed spine pieces, and then it had like blood and gore, almost like it looked like someone had ripped out the backbone of the doll, and then the 3D spine was stuck on. It was creepy, it was gory, it was wonderful. It was everything that it should be for a kind of spooky costume, a horror costume. She'd really thought about it as well, and all of the little details, the way the button eyes were like not in the place where eyes should be, the cutesy lips, you know, even those cutie bow lips looked a bit, you know, terrifying. The kind of Edwardian dress, which I have to say fit the model perfectly, you know, and it was just amazing. It was that kind of not very nice purple. Again, that added to the kind of horror. Yeah, it was all so well thought through. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic, it was a genius costume. And yeah, I really liked it. I think it was probably my favourite of the episode. And then there was Yasmin. So Yasmin's was a devil woman from her Jamaican, I think she said it was a Jamaican, some kind of folklore retype thing, devil woman. And yeah, and it had like a bloody hand on under the apron, and the idea that this was a woman that used to lure men, and yeah, oof, this is the thing. I'm just not really into the horror genre at all. But yeah, so the idea is that it was kind of like, you know, gory, but she had a very pretty skirt on, so it was all about like, you know, this idea of being very pretty, but underneath it was kind of a bit sinister and gory. And I think she did a really good job. The one thing that Yasmin didn't get finished was the hat. So one of the features of her devil woman is that she had like a scarred head, and that the idea is that she would have this wide brim hat to kind of hide it. And I can see how that would have added to it, but unfortunately 5 hours to do something like that isn't a long time. She did get the rest of her costume finished, but didn't have time for the hat. Although I would have loved to have seen it with the hat, I don't think it really needed it. It didn't make it any less horror. So yeah, so I think that was good. Gaynor. So Gaynor had a mythical, I think she called it was a Welsh word. I think it was a Mary Morgan. I've never heard that word before. So a mythical creature, woman, again, kind of like a sea siren-y type lady. And Gaynor did what Gaynor does, and she made a really pretty, really well-fitted outfit. Whether it was horror enough, I think was what was playing on a lot of people's minds, was, is it, you know, has it met the brief? Did it tell a story? I mean, in my mind, I think it probably did, because for Gaynor, you know, it definitely did tell a story. They were a little bit nitpicky with Gaynor over the finishings, how she finished, but I have to say, again, down the runway, it looked very beautiful. And then Kaz. So Kaz did a kind of high priestess dress. I thought hers was very clever, and Patrick did point this out. It kind of gave the idea of those kind of sinister characters. So if you imagine like the Handmaid's Tale and that kind of thing, and yeah, and actually, like, for me, Little Red Riding Hood, although it is a fairy tale, I find that, because in the end it's like the wolf and wolves in sheep's clothing, and that it's all kind of a little bit, there's something about the colour red that gives me sinister. Now, what I loved about Kaz's is the way that she did the kind of neck corset piece. Now, bearing in mind that one of the credentials for this is that it has to fit well, and to do something that fits around the neck, I think is really difficult, because I've struggled with that before, and it fitted her model perfectly. So we had like this high neck, and then it kind of gave away to this, because this corset collar piece was a neck piece, but it looked like a collar, if that makes sense. And then the full kind of cape, and it was double layered, was full of pleats that gave it beautiful shaping. It was in some ways it was a outfit that looked simple, but you could see that there'd been an awful lot of work in. And I could definitely see it as a horror character. I really like that one. I did really like that one. I have to say, I love everything that Kaz does. I think Kaz is amazing. I really do enjoy her makes. And then there was Kit. So Kit did the Scarecrow inspired by the Doctor Who Scarecrow characters, which I have seen, and I will agree that they are terrifying. It was definitely a creepy character, and Kit's model looked truly terrifying. There's something about putting a bag over your head that can be quite terrifying. Kit worked really hard on stressing the Hessian sack to make it look like straw. I did see that they'd actually bought some straw along, but we didn't see any of that in the final garment, because they had done it all with like stressing the fabric, which and definitely the way that they handled the fabrics was really clever. I loved the way that they handled the Hessian to make the mouth as well, and had like the main struts of the Hessian intact for the teeth, but then cut the rest away. Yeah, that kind of made it look quite sinister. But I am going to say, and this may be controversial, but sometimes you have to say the controversial things. At the end of the day, it was a very simple top, a very simple trouser, and a sack. And it was all tied to the middle with a belt. So when we say made to measure, that would have fitted anybody. So for me, it wasn't so much a made to measure. Was it a horrific costume, like a horror character costume? Absolutely. But I'll tell you why I thought that, because when they came to the Garment of the Week, they decided to give it to two people. So the Garment of the Week went to Orla and Kit. And I just felt that maybe it didn't need to go to two people. I think that when you've got two people to contest in any competition, when you've got two people that you think have done really well and they have met the brief, they've done two fantastic horror characters, then you need to go on the rest of the brief. So then you go to, okay, so which one fit the best, which was the best made to measure? And Orla's was the best made to measure, because her gory purple dress fitted her model beautifully. But that's just my opinion. So feel free to disagree with me, pop it in the comments, but that was the way that I felt about it. So yeah. And unfortunately, someone always has to go home, and this week it was Gayna's turn to go home. And yeah, I loved the fact at the end that Patrick said that she was so warm and generous, and it was sad for her to go home. And I know that my son, Joe, baby Sparkles, is going to be so disappointed that his nan has left. So yeah, sad times, but I am really glad that the 4 contestants that we've got left, I think, are going to make fantastic semi-finalists. So next week is 1920s week, so that should be really exciting. Lots of lots of Charleston and 1920s flapper dresses. Who knows what we might get up to next week. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you all next week, Wednesday, 6 p.m. for my next OMB synopsis, and it will be 1920s week. Don't forget to sparkle. Bye for now.